Hey guys, welcome back to the show here. With us is
With our
our guest. Yeah, yeah.
unsloganed thing so far.
Our unslogan thing. We need to brainstorm a slogan. But anyways, here's our guest, Luke. Say hi, Luke.
Hey, hey, hey.
So he's back for round two. He
Mm,
decided that, you know what, we're actually not as big of idiots as he thought we were.
Yeah,
oh
I'm
Um,
boy.
gonna I'm gonna go for a couple sentences this time.
Okay, you know what? That's fair.
Yeah,
I mean, I think this is more of a topic that you can,
yeah,
converse
yeah.
on and share your opinion. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, today we're going to start talking about girls right away. So yeah, it's a kind of an edgy topic for our second episode ever. So have a little bit of grace, please and thank you. But yeah, we're just going to share basically, and I mean, we can just talk. It doesn't have to specifically be about girls. It can be just general about dating or um, other aspects of the male female relationship as it pertains to our experience. And obviously, this is completely subjective in nature. We're not saying anything is, truly true um, from any of our perspectives because obviously dating is relative to each person. Um, so, without further ado, we're gonna say, Andrew,
hmm
when you are looking for a potential candidate, what do you look for first?
Oh. Um, I mean, what do you look for first? I mean, depends, because the first time you meet someone, the first thing you notice about them is their physical appearance, right?
That is true.
Unless they have a
So,
really annoying voice, right?
I
sure.
mean,
So, I
yeah.
mean, I guess it depends on the context in which you meet them. But in general, you're going to obviously notice their physical or metaphysical, if you could, like,
Relating to their being, relating to their
I
being,
don't know what you would classify someone's voice as, but physical as in
characteristic.
their, sure, as in their look and also their characteristics being their confidence level, their body language, their voice, as you say,
Hmm.
or whatever. So, I mean, that's going to be your first impression. But uh, if I am actually, I mean, that's what you notice with when you meet any person, whether they're man or a woman.
Hmm.
Um, so if I'm actually now, I wouldn't say that I am actively always assessing people so whether or not I can date them. But if I was going to, I am usually looking for if I think that our interests or personalities are on the same wavelength, I
Totally.
would say.
I vibe with that. I vibe with that. I like something you said about the way that they present themselves, and I feel like that can kind of make or break having even just like a friendship with somebody. Because if someone is presenting themselves in a very arrogant way, then it's kind of like, well, do I really want to be friends with that person? And I mean, I'm not like making a generalization saying that most arrogant people aren't good people. Um, but if it definitely is a way, like especially off of a first impression, when you are presenting yourself in a certain way that may seem arrogant, which I mean, like we can all probably be a little bit guilty of sometimes. I'm not saying that I'm the most innocent person here and that I am never somewhat prideful, and I mean that's something I got to work on. But at the same time, yeah, it definitely is something that you notice first. It's something like obviously like their physical appearance, but also how they carry that physical appearance mentally
Mm.
and emotionally. And I feel like um, if you are properly observing people and whether they be male or female and we wanting a dating relationship with them or just a friendship relationship with them, you are analyzing their whole being within their physical being because you're saying you can make I know us as human beings are very susceptible to this as to make crass observations about people's character based off of their appearance and the
Mm.
way that they're carrying themselves. And even I just caught myself saying, like, even as if somebody carries himself in what seems to be an arrogant way, they may not be arrogant at all, and it may be a complete misread or misreading of what was actually true, and it can be a complete character judge flaw. Um, but that being said, I really like what you said there. Personally, I mean, like, obviously, that is the first thing you notice. But then when you get to, you start talking with them more, and you kind of, um, you can pick up on certain social cliques and other things like that. You kind of get to know their personality a little bit. And so, obviously, there's certain aspects of your personality that have to line up with your own in order to make you somewhat compatible, even as like friendships and friendship relationships as well. Um, but subjectively, what would you find um, is the most valuable personality quality or characteristic?
I mean, I think that is kind of like a question with no answer.
Oh, completely. It's 100%
Um,
subjective to each person.
well, even within each person, I feel like um, you might think that, oh, I have to find someone that um, needs X characteristic, or they're going to act in Y certain way. But then upon meeting someone, you realize that maybe they don't have that specific quality, but maybe they have some other quality or even some combination of qualities that is more uh, winsome to you, if I can use that slightly archaic word.
Mm,
Um, but I think it's almost like, I feel like if you're looking for one, or if you've got a grocery list almost of specific personality traits or specific uh, uh, physical traits or hobbies or those type of things, sure, you can look at those things insofar as they help to guide uh, your preference. But I think if you make any of those things a, like, oh, this is the ideal, then you're kind of like almost blinding yourself to
mm,
um, yeah, a person's actual worth or value. Uh,
mm,
so yeah, I think for me it's kind of like, I can't really say, oh, they gotta have this or this, because maybe they will or
totally.
maybe they won't.
Totally. That's
Mm.
that's yeah, that's so good. I follow this page on Instagram called Moral Revolution, and I've been sharing others on my Instagram stories. But they're all about dating and sexuality, especially trying to live like ethically and morally. And one of the aspects or one of the posts they had the other day was that just because somebody does not check off one or more of the boxes on your quote unquote list doesn't mean that they're actually not a perfect match for you.
Mm.
And it's actually like we've been talking about the initial sort of interaction there, and then when you get to know them and you kind of start seeing their personality shine a little bit more than just surface level, um, then you can say like, okay, what does this person more than just in a physical way have to offer or either a dating relationship or a friendship. And I mean, I'm not saying all friendships are conditional, though the best friendships are unconditional, in which you can um, not spend time talking to each other for an extended period of time. But when you do finally reconvene, um, it's like you never were separated in the first place.
Mm.
So that's another. I
Mm.
feel like a crucial characteristic in my mind would be, this is again personal preference, but I feel like a sense of humor is like a high valued aspect for
Mm-hmm.
somebody that, like, I wouldn't want somebody who couldn't laugh
Mm.
because that's just such an important an integral part of who I am. Like I like to joke around. Those people who know me know that it's it's a huge aspect. And so yeah, I mean, I generally like what you said. For me, that's where I draw the line.
Mm,
If you can't laugh, then
mm.
mm.
I think humor is an interesting one because I think it's almost like um, if you're a person that doesn't laugh or doesn't joke around, it's not just a matter of like, oh, I don't like humor. It's almost like a matter of like, like laughter is kind of an integral part of the human experience, I think. So I feel like
Hmm.
if you're a person that is just like, I don't I don't laugh, I don't joke. Maybe you're not a joker, maybe you don't know how to make jokes. But if you can't laugh even at just the mundane facts of life or just stuff, then I feel like on some level there's some emotional or spiritual enrichment that needs to take place there.
Mm, yeah.
Um,
Not
Hmm.
to mention, taking into account, um, what's happened in the past and moving forward too,
mm,
right? I think that's when you get your humor from what you've experienced. Um, and I find myself when people make a lot of jokes, I find my mind having flashbacks to either moments in my life or other people's lives that I've heard of or they talk to me about, in which such scenarios also happened, and that just kind of makes it more funnier,
mm,
uh, if funnier is a word.
mm,
But uh, so Luke, you're offering a different
Hmm.
perspective because you're at a different point in your life.
I am.
So what would you, like as a high school person,
Hmm.
um, trying to navigate life at your stage. What's your input into this conversation?
Um, well, I feel like with my peers around me and how we are, I think it's really important that it says it feels like oversaid, but the ability to just be yourself and just relax and express yourself with who you really are, even if that person has flaws. You know,
Mm,
I don't expect everyone to be perfect, and if people can really be themselves when they interact with me, it's really nice.
yeah, I think that's huge. I mean,
Hmm.
society and culture are telling us that we always have to be somebody different, somebody better.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what you said is just like if you can find out who you are and just be yourself and not put on a front or a face,
Hmm.
especially like in a dating relationship, because obviously you're trying to go for this person long term. It's not just like a turnaround kind of thing. Then you actually, yeah, I feel like that's just a building block in developing integrity and key characteristics that'll last you the rest of your life and beyond. So,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just to restate that it's key in any relationship that you don't have to fake your personality. You don't have to
Mm,
Hmm.
pretend you're a person that you're not. And I think that in general, uh, in almost most respects, a dating relationship should be treated kind of like a just a normal relationship or a normal friendship. It's not like
Hmm.
it's
yeah.
really so different. It's more just the level of commitment and the context of where the relationship is headed that's different, but the actual minute to minute minutia of your actual interactions, I don't think is really so different than it should be just with an average friend.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, like to reference Moral Revolution again, they um, they honestly they're so good. If you don't follow them on Instagram, definitely give them a follow. I think they're definitely worth it. They got some pretty top notch, information and stuff, especially for maintaining integrity and morality in a corrupt culture that over sexualizes a lot of things. So if you don't follow them, definitely give them a follow. Whether you're single or in a relationship or looking, they have some really top-notch advice. So, anyways, they also posted something along the lines of how most successful monogamous long-term dating or married relationship started with the couple being friends first. And like you said, I think that's such a crucial part because you can kind of get to know the person and you get to know like their clicks and their ups and their downs, and you can see them um, at their best and at their worst, and yeah, I mean you can move on from there. And I'm not saying that like when you spend a lot of time as friends with somebody and you see like, oh, they have this certain social click, I don't like that you should just axe them completely out of the question. But you definitely have to have a high standard moving forward, especially like with who you let into that vulnerable place in your life, because dating is vulnerable. It's all about being vulnerable. And I mean, especially with this over sexualized culture, it also tells us that vulnerability is weakness, and that being vulnerable only leads to you getting hurt. And yeah, that may be true in some cases, but in a lot of cases, vulnerability actually is a lot of growth and a lot of truth and power is spoken into your life. And honestly, like every time I've been vulnerable, I have yet to regret it.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's key in every relationship, right? Including your relationship with God. Um, if you aren't vulnerable, then because what the fear of being vulnerable, right, is that you're going to get hurt. But also, what's one of the most um, deep desires that people have is that they want to be they want to be known, but then not only do they want to be known, they also want to be loved, right? So I believe this was Tim Keller posted this on his Twitter, who is still alive, by the way. Dylan thought he died.
For context, yeah, I texted Andrew today, or I don't know, talking on Discord, and I'm like, hey man, did you know Tim Keller died? He's like, what? You're whack. I was like, no, yeah, he died. And he's like, oh, I think so. I don't think he died, but that's okay. I mean, that's sad if he did. And then he ended up fact checking me, and he's
He's
definitely
very
alive.
healthy.
He tweeted like 20 minutes after.
Yep, yep, yep.
So, anyways,
I think it was him, or maybe it was someone else, but basically they said, um, or he said with respect to Christianity, he was like, it is, um, what was it? Um, it is empty to be loved and not known, and it is horrifying to be known and not loved. But to be known and loved is I don't remember exactly what he said about that, but basically he was saying to be known and loved is the ideal for a person, and that is what God offers. And I mean, certainly in a human relationship, it's people aren't perfect. It's not really possible A, to be fully known, and B, to be fully loved in the way that we want to be. But um, we need to be pursuing that type of relationship, and we can't just run away from intimacy or vulnerability because it can be painful. Because while it can be painful, it also is the only route to that fully known, fully loved relationship.
that's so good. Honestly, wow. Um, that's crazy. I I totally agree with everything you're saying. Um, I even go as so far as to say that you. I think you already said this, so maybe I'll just. But you actually can't be fully known and fully loved if you aren't vulnerable.
Hmm.
And I think that's so true. And I mean, like, yeah, again, I hate to bring up, well, I mean, it's true. So just bring up society and culture, especially in North America. And it's saying like, nope, don't be vulnerable, shut yourself in. It's all, you're the only one that matters. Nobody else matters. Yet, it's creating this individualistic society. And North America and Europe are the only places in the world like this. And look at the relationships that we have. I mean, people are, and especially during this time of a pandemic, people are more, society is telling you to worry about yourself and buy as much toilet paper and hand sanitizer as you can, not leaving any for anybody else. Like you need to consume as much as you can in order for your own self-preservation, and it's cancerous. It is this idea of not being vulnerable and not, because vulnerability in itself is risky. Like you said, it's there's a certain aspect of risk to being vulnerable, and there's a certain aspect to not buying enough toilet paper that some people now deem risky. But that being said, um, like we're the only society in the world that is like this. All other societies around the world, maybe there's a few exceptions, but in our capitalistic, materialistic society, we're very individualistic. Whereas other places around the world that aren't the way we are very collective in their thinking. And I mean, if one person is in trouble, the community bands behind that person to help them out. And that's honestly why we're seeing such a global expansion of Christianity in general. It's because of those interpersonal relationships, and people are just like so communal in everything they do in the rest of the world. And I mean, yeah, they're less advanced technologically, um, but they have a lot more time to sit and ponder and think about what's important in their lives. Whereas in North America, we are just constantly told that if we're not busy and we're not go, 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 then we're wasting our time and actually we're not contributing to the fullness of society's movement forward. So, I mean, it's just something to chew on. I think actually, just like what is really important? Is it you, or is it everybody around you, or is it both? And I mean, that's
Mm.
just in general, human interpersonal relationships. Obviously, your relationship with Jesus takes front seat in that. And to say this overall about everything we've been talking about in dating relationships or friendship relationships, we should be seeking Jesus first in these relationships that we have. It's the best way to honor everybody involved, because when you seek Jesus first, you become like him. And becoming like Jesus, Jesus says in the Gospel of John, no greater love has anything than this, that someone lay down his life for his brother. And I mean, if that's the kind of love that we're talking about, where you're willing to lay your life down for somebody, that's pretty vulnerable, and that's to be fully seen, fully known, and fully loved.
Mm. So let me see if I can summarize what you're saying here. You're saying in Western culture, in North America and other Western countries, like maybe say Australia or other countries that are influenced by kind of the North American machine, we have this trend of individualism, and individualism ultimately is asking you to better yourself, to work hard, to be busy, to make money, to be successful, and it's ultimately inward focused. And because it's inward focused, we have lost our ability to be in healthy communities and in healthy relationships with each other. And furthermore, because we're so inward focused, we have a hard time relating to Jesus. And that is just totally stifling our ability to, yeah, just properly relate to each other and and be, as we've been saying, fully known and fully loved. Is that an accurate summation?
Yep, completely,
Okay, cool. I like it.
completely. So Luke, I mean, I know I asked for your opinion back in the aspect of in dating or those kinds of interpersonal relationships. But in general, what do you think as a young person? What do you think society is telling you, especially in this North American culture where we've all grown up? If you were to take a long kind of uh, glance and you were to think about it, and you don't have to answer today, maybe I'll ask you again some other time. But what would you say society is telling?
Just in general.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
you can agree with us, you can disagree. It doesn't have to be like uniform. We don't all have to agree. That's what discussion is about.
um, that's a tough question. I feel like a lot of times the work behind success isn't really demonstrated. Like you're not a lot of the times you see the big multi-million dollar
You keep kind of cutting out. Sorry,
my
you might have to move your mic a little
apologies,
bit close to your face.
man. Hello, 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 hello. I was saying a lot of the work behind success and successful people isn't really shown. You know, I feel like we see the end product, but we don't see the grind behind it, the amount of failures behind the success.
hmm
Did you get that?
Yep, yep, and I would agree. I mean, yep. In order to achieve what you want in life, society tells you that you definitely have to strive day and night for it. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, like a lot of people sleep during the night, and and obviously they're not going to see the work that you're putting in, whether it be practicing a skill or honing something. Um, but at the end of the day, I can tell you, like from my experience, you know, growing up and playing hockey for the majority of my life, and then ended up playing somewhat high level hockey for my age category. Um, Society told me, and especially the culture that I was raised in, told me that if I did not ascertain to a certain standard, then I was no longer uh, trying to word this properly. Um, that I was not um, specifically gifted in this area, and that's not actually true. Um, like I would like to consider myself, and again, this is a subjective opinion, but I would like to consider myself somewhat athletic.
Hmm.
Now, if society's telling me like, yes, you have to work day and night to achieve your goals, but as well, if you aren't working day and night, then actually you aren't as athletic as you think you are. Then there's a flaw in that logic somewhere. Um, and I mean, like, yeah, we all want to achieve things during our lives. I think the greatest thing that we could ever come across has already been achieved for us. Um, but that is for each person to decide on their own. And if you do end up making that decision that you the decision that I'm talking about is accepting and receiving Christ into your life, then all other things that happen to you, um, whether they be part of your passions or talents, you can use for the glory of God, which is actually the greatest honor and greatest, I would say, fulfilling thing you can do in your life because it has eternal value, eternal consequences. It doesn't fade like the pursuit of finances or monetary things, materialistic things, rather. Um, Like you can't, when you die, you can't take anything with you, but you can take the character development and the other things that you have. God has granted you the talents and the gifts to do, um, that have grown your character and integrity, to be able to, carry and lead others on to the same goal that you have, which is, in 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 my opinion, the number one thing I can strive for is to be like Jesus. There is no other thing worth it to me, because that carries, I can, I not only help other people, but I carry an eternal weight with me. And so, I mean, obviously, um, I can't, I can't, you know, a lot of the work that, like you said, a lot of the work um, that you put in goes unnoticed. And that's times like when you are, sitting alone in your room and praying or reading your Bible, or doing those things in which Jesus says, like, yeah, don't do this in public because your heavenly Father knows, what you did, and He will reward you for it. Um, those kinds of things, yeah, like they're not, and there's a difference between seeking the glory of man and seeking the glory of God. And I think we have to come to grips with how that applies to each one of us in our lives today. Um, so yeah, that's my final kind of thought on that.
Mm.
Cool.
Maybe that was kind of a rant. It's
It
okay.
it was, but that's okay. Any closing thoughts here from Luke?
Yeah. So I feel like closing thoughts. I feel like it demoralizing to look at people who have succeeded because they're the top. You don't see the people below them who are struggling to get where they are, and that's where you know it can be it can feel really bad when you're trying to get to trying to get better at something or trying to acquire a skill. You struggle and you don't see the people you look up to struggle. You don't see them working hours on it, one that's one thing. You just the product of all that. You just see the one thing that they have achieved.
Mm.
So I feel it's important to remember that Van Gogh was he sucked at painting at one point.
It's
Mozart
true.
probably created some of the worst music ever when he first started.
It's true.
So starting point for everything. You just gotta remember that and don't give up.
hmm Like I used to, be really bad at Warzone, and now
And now
I'm
you're
only,
still bad at
and now
Warzone.
I'm slightly better.
Mm.
I'm not
you're
bad. I'm
you're
just
mediocre.
slightly lower than average. So,
Yeah, I think that idea of success, or the struggle of success not being visible is magnified by the the elephant in the room of social media that forever
Mhm.
lurks over the the our individualistic society where
mm,
uh, our social media feeds, right, tend to be a nicely curated, filtered highlight reel of our lives, which oftentimes is not even an accurate representation of what happened.
Mhm.
And then, you're, as an outsider looking in, you don't see any of the in between. You just see all the highlights, which have probably been embellished, and you compare that to your actual reality, and it could be very damaging, even just to your general mental health, I think.
Mhm.
So it's important to remember that as well. That social media is it's good. It has a lot of good things to it, but at the same time, it can be a very uh, difficult and even dangerous thing just to compare your life to someone else's highlight reel.
Definitely.
With that said, we're
Definitely.
at 33 minutes.
Look at that.
I think we're aiming for that length roughly. So
Hmm.
wrap things up here. But
Definitely. That was good. That was a good
it's good.
conversation.
It's good.
So yeah, thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back because you just listened to again three loose cannons talk
Loose
about
cannons.
a couple things. So I mean, I don't think I said anything. We were worried that I was going to say something though,
We were.
and I was
It's
even worried
Good
I
to
was
cut
going to
that
say
out.
something.
Dylan went over the walls, went nuts.
Hey, we're just taking it a day at a time. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you listening. Yep, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
yeah, and Tim Keller, if you're listening, we're glad that you're still alive.